Welcome to Built for This, the podcast where purpose meets performance. Hosted by business strategist and human behavior specialist Carly Pepin, this show dives into the real stories behind high-growth businesses. Let's bring life to your vision.
Hey guys, welcome back today. I'm really excited for today. I think this one's going to be a very cool interview. I have Mark Kenigsberg here with us. He's the marketing and growth leader who specializes in aligning systems, incentives, and teams around long-term value creation. He has led go-to-market and transformation efforts across health, legal tech, and global digital business, helping organizations balance trust, innovation, and scalable growth. So welcome, Mark. I'm really excited to have you.
Thanks, Carly. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to talking.
Yeah, so currently Mark is the VP of Azami, and he has been there for quite some time. But I think what was really interesting is how he first started his journey over there and kind of what he chose to focus on. And I kind of love how much time the company gave you to focus on what's really important instead of being like rush, 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 rush. So start us off with sharing how you got started at Azami and what you actually got started with that was most important, even though you guys had future goals.
Right. So it was actually very, very interesting. I joined, and Azami is a legal tech company. So we really build software for legal professionals, patent attorneys, that type of thing. And when I joined, it was really to build marketing in what had traditionally been a sales-led organization. And I kind of looked at what was going on. And, when I first joined, I wasn't sure how exciting IP would be, but it turns out that it's actually very, very fascinating. And I realized that we really had to build a lot. We really had to build from the ground up. And I turned around, and I was very lucky to be given the opportunity to actually build a system. Obviously there are things to do in the short term, but I understood that the only way we're really going to scale is if we had a foundation that was strong, and a lot of times you're expected to build something very quickly or deliver results immediately. And we set about going back to basics, rebuilding everything. And we used the whole CRM and HubSpot to be the catalyst for change. So instead of trying to get the system to work the way we wanted, I designed the system to operate in the way the business should, and then use that to educate the other departments about how revenue existed as a system. So we actually kind of, went about it a little bit backwards. We got the system to train the people rather than, the other way around. And as a result of that, we were able to build a strong foundation, and we're able to go to market with, two motions simultaneously, which was the sales-led that had been in place, as well as introducing a product-led motion, both of which we're operating today. So yes, I was very lucky to be given that opportunity. A lot of fun.
And I probably should have started with this so people know what we're talking about. What does Azami do? My bad, by the way, because I've already talked to him.
So Azami is very interesting. It's a company that makes software for IP professionals, and specifically around foreign filing of patents and the patent maintenance, renewals, annuities, foreign translations. We now have an AI-focused LLM that does that. So basically, you want to protect your IP, you want to get it granted in different countries, make sure that it's kept up to date and you can manage that portfolio. We have software that does that.
Okay, amazing. Now everyone knows what we're talking about. And I know that when you came on board, it was a bit of a shift in the marketing dynamic because you were kind of going to a new market. And I remember you telling me you guys spent like a whole year getting prep. So share a little bit about what that first year looked like before you actually went to market with the new product and why you guys invested that much time.
Right. So we were trying to do a few things at the same time. So we were firstly launching, a new product that was very different than what was existing in the market at the time. And we were changing our motion from completely sales-led to a parallel product-led motion. And we're moving upstream in terms of, what was traditionally more smaller to mid-market, going mid-market to enterprise. So we're kind of doing all of that at the same time. So what we did is we really were building a tool that, we felt at the time was missing, but a lot of people hadn't really thought about it. So we created a category for something that was really quite unique. So we had to prepare the market for understanding what it was. So the market education we knew was going to be a big part of getting people to see the value in it. So busy building the tool, trying to establish product market fit at the same time as kind of thinking about what the demand creation would look like for that, and working with product to actually work with design partners to roll it out. So all of this was about building something scalable. Azami in the past was a sales-led company that had originally been two services company that merged together. And we understood that we wanted to be a software company. But in order to do that, we really had to facilitate scale. And the only way to really build scale was to let the existing business, continue while slowly shifting resources to the new one. And then operating both in parallel, So it was really very interesting. I think a lot of the time at Azami for me has been balancing contradictions, or what seemed to be contradictions. One of the things that was really strange to digest was that we're in the business of helping the people who protect innovation. And we're offering innovative products to the people who protect innovation. And they're the slowest last people to adopt anything. Like when people talk about early adopters, they're not talking about IP attorneys. So the normal language of, we're disrupting and democratizing and all the other wonderful things we used to in the world of SaaS and tech, these are scary, scary words to our audience, So we had to really, make sure that we balance their concerns. And their whole focus was risk mitigation, where we're coming from a SaaS-based industry, that's all about technology and efficiency and, everything else that, this scary, shiny thing could offer. So.
And I'm curious too, because when you started marketing to them, what did the marketing actually look like? How did you get that message across to basically this customer base that tend to be quite resistant?
So I think one of the luxuries that I had in taking some time to understand and go back to basics and kind of redo the market research and the segmentation and try and understand that is it gave me enough time to learn a little bit, how they think, which isn't always something we get as marketers. So really we try to do, two things at the same time. The one is we tried to focus on value creation, and that the value we were used to creating was actually exactly what these people wanted, but we were just putting it in a different place in the cycle. So whereas normally in a services-led or, even sales-led environment, you're trying to convince a customer about, all the amazing benefits they'll get from using your service or your product or whatever it is, we rather started exposing aspects of that value to them without the barrier of having to have a sales call or meet with someone or sign up for something, and then when they start to be able to realize that value themselves, then you don't have to have a whole discussion trying to explain what the value is. So the one thing was really about bringing that value creation earlier. The second thing was about letting them frame things in the way they understood it. One of the things I understood, I would say early-ish on, maybe somewhere in the middle, was the idea that half the time we're saying the same thing. We're just using very different terms of framing it. So instead of trying to come up with the perfect messaging and find those, that wonderful hero statement or value prop that's going to explain exactly what it is let them explain it in their own words. And one of the things that was super, super useful for this was webinars. So instead of having, a lot of webinars where we were talking about us, is our curated topics where I've got people in our community, in our customer base, to actually lead round tables talking through the points themselves. And what emerges is a common thread. And when it's 3, 4, 5 people all talking about it from different angles, then it's much easier to highlight, oh, we're the same thing, just, coming from a slightly different perspective. It's also much easier to endear yourself to community that you led do the talking rather than trying to talk at them,
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious too, because even on the back end as a company, right? Going from sales led to product led, what did that look like? How did you sort of coordinate and organize that within the company? So that's a big shift there too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still something we're balancing, not something we're
Mhm.
completely through, and we still operate both motions in parallel. Um, I think it was really another contradiction, you know. Um, it's about doing enough now, to keep the lights on from the sales led motion and keep ARR on everything where it's meant to be, but investing enough resources so that as things grow, you're more leaning towards that future product led. Now,
Mm,
that's easy to say, but to answer your question, what did it look like in reality? So, a lot of that was actually about educating people internally and aligning incentives, because a lot of the discussion and the tension between sales and marketing is often about, time scale. It's not necessarily we want different things. It's just we maybe want them at different times, you
mm,
know? So aligning incentives that, this will actually get you what you want. And how will that be? Because you'll have depth of use from customers. And sales isn't in especially in a SaaS-based business, sales isn't about how many new logos you get. It's about what kind of customer fulfillment and retention you have, 6 months later, 2 years later. So that depth of use really aligns very well with the product-led motion because you have people actually using the features.
mhm,
So it really was like an email about this is what product led growth is about, and a skill up about how do we do this, and examples of flywheels, and really getting people excited. Over we have together hour once a week, and talking and getting people excited about customers using our products, and over the course of a few months, getting people to start speaking in a product led way. That was actually probably the biggest um, part of getting the company to move towards it. It was less about convincing maybe a manager or the CEO. It was more about getting people to think in terms of product, which was actually very fun because it's super, super exciting. Product led growth is one of the most fun ways of driving customers.
yeah, I'm curious too, because even like, why did you guys decide to move to the product led dynamic as a company?
So, so I think that um, it's a function of where the industry is going or where we believe it's going, and that really is about the commoditizing of services and the ability to really go from startup to scale up and beyond. Um, so I think a lot of it was model based, really about the margins and about what would be our competitive differentiator over time. Because you don't want to be competing in a margin based war, So you want to be doing something that is really unique, and we thought we could do that by moving to software, where we created an asset, and that asset is essentially data. But ultimately, it was a a commercial decision more than anything else.
And when you guys did the transition, right? So you have the commercial decision for like revenue for the future, but I know that transitions like this can also bleed revenue. So how did you ensure to stay profitable? Do you guys get investments? Were you able to do it internally?
No, so it was without investment. Um, really, a lot of it was about being very clear about what we wanted.
Mhm.
So, firstly, we had some great people inside who monitored margins, things like that, and gave us visibility into the finances. But this I think was one of those areas where it was about aligning people around numbers. Um, and HubSpot is actually what we did it. So when I first started, everything was very siloed. There was this department and that department. Sales was responsible for new logos and customer success for fulfillment, and obviously I can't take credit for breaking down all the silos, but we re-engineered our HubSpot setup to
Mhm.
be a system of revenue. So revenue is an ecosystem rather than four departments, KPIs or targets.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. If you're really resonating with what we're talking about and want to get clear on what truly drives you, what your core values are, head on over to my website. In the tools and tips section, there is a free values assessment. And this is a quick exercise that's going to help you to uncover what actually matters most with you so you can lead and live with more clarity, fulfillment, and momentum.
you know? And it's the interrelationship between those different numbers that speaks to the health of the business. So, for example, we created a dashboard which I called the marketing machine, and it looked at three core components of the funnel, right? Which was, let's call it, acquisition, top of funnel, through to, just before conversion, what's typically, sales led, like a meeting. And then there was the core of the machine, which was sales ability to convert, and move through. And then the fulfillment and, retention rates that were coming out of that. And then the whole thing was all you had to do, whichever part you were responsible for, is you had to make sure that your inputs were in the range you'd modeled on. So you didn't have to worry about everything in the system. So I knew, for example, that I was expecting certain things to occur between 4 to 5% in the middle of the machine. And as long as that stayed true, then I could just focus on mine. So we started thinking in terms of, what is the relationship between the different departments rather than what is our own individual KPIs. Now, you're still responsible for your KPIs, but once you start looking at the way systems, different parts of the system relate to each other, then you don't have to be so concerned with what is the exact number or the value or the percentage or the margin because the system keeps itself healthy.
Okay, and I'm curious too, because I know like all the stuff we're talking about, right? We're talking about this dynamic that you implemented for it was a full year, right? Before everything really came into fruition. So
Right.
when you think about that, it's like, what did that look like even in the leadership dynamic when you're discussing with like your team, when you're discussing with the company that, hey, this is going to take us a long time and we're going to basically shift gears for an entire year. I know people don't often like slowing down like that.
Right. So look, I had to also prove that it made sense, right? And that is about delivering some wins. So a lot of the wins are around efficiencies. So, for example, the way that the organization had traditionally measured, performance of marketing or that, marketing type functions was the cost, cost per SQL, cost per customer, whatever, standard kind of metrics. So I decreased that. So I reduced the cost materially. And I broke it into three stages. One was, kind of give me some time to learn, figure out where I've landed, which did not last a year by any stretch of imagination. And then the next part, which was most of that year while we were designing, was really I will take everything that was being done and do it much better than has been done before. But that's really a prelude to, what we can do and shift in terms of order of magnitude. So, for example, conferences, especially in this industry, are a main source of leads and meetings and customers. And so we reduced the cost per SQL from conferences by about 64%. And I did that within the first 6 months, and kept it declining. And then we also increased, the volume of leads from inbound and other things like that through, some just basic content programs. So that helped fuel the pool of people who were going to move across. But yeah, it wasn't a world where it was like, okay, enjoy, do whatever you want for a year, and then we'll have fun. I mean, we had aggressive targets, and the name of the game was, beating each quarter before it in terms of efficiencies and pipeline contribution buys us the fuel and room we need to be able to roll out something new.
That's cool. I'm curious too, because as you guys were going through this, what were the KPIs that you actually measured before revenue was something that started to show up?
Right. So I mean, we did it in two ways. So one is, we just looked at the funnel in terms of traditional funnel, all the way from top all the way through to revenue. And we started at the first, and then we just, went down like that. But the kind of North Star metric for most of the year was really just number of SQLs and cost of SQL, because that's traditionally how it had been measured. So that was what was keeping us honest, really. one of the other things that was very important, I think, was we expanded the journey. Like in a lot of, marketing is traditionally, awareness, consideration, activation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in B2B, and especially in complex buying cycles, you actually have a much more, broken down awareness stage. So you have like the 5 stages of awareness, right? All the way from, not at all aware to problem aware, solution aware, somewhat aware, product aware, and then most aware. So we looked at that as a funnel as well. So we started moving people through that. So the one thing was really about, just seeing the relationship of every stage of the funnel in comparison to SQL volume and cost, and moving through until we caught up to that stage in the funnel. And then, we could honestly keep tracking past that in terms of contribution. And then the second was really in terms of marketing contribution to pipeline. Because we were introducing a lot of new things. So what we did is we started measuring, what that contribution to pipeline was in terms of firstly, meetings, but within already a quarter, it became actual revenue creation. So while it did take us time to implement things, it didn't take us a full year to see revenue.
No worries. And I'm curious too, because even that dynamic of, just tracing the customer progress, like how long would you say it took to be able to get these customers to see this differently, to see that this new product, the edge in the market was actually going to be valuable for them?
A great question. So it was very different for different segments. So traditionally, what we did is we went to play in new segments first. Give me one sec.
Wait, we're going to
Yeah.
pause. We'll be right back. Hold on. Okay, guys, we're starting up again. We had one of the fun tickles in the throat. So basically, we were talking about like what it looks like for you to go from this individual who's not interested to very interested in this new market, well, segment in a sense with the product, and you were explaining how it depended on the segment.
Exactly. So firstly, we had traditionally played in particular segments, where there was more of a natural product market fit for what we were offering before. So what we did is we didn't try to move everyone that we'd spoken to and knew us, into completely new product at once, but we started speaking to new segments. So we broke it into 3 main, kind of segments, if you will. There was, our traditional base, which was more used to what we were. And there was the segments that we traditionally hadn't had a great offering for, which we could now introduce a new product to as something new. And then the people in the middle who, maybe tangentially had run into us or, and we focused different types of efforts and different go-to-markets for the different segments. For example, one of the things we did, which is super, super cool, and was a lot of fun and is still ongoing, is so I took over the BDR department. We moved it from sales to marketing, and I moved one of the BDRs into what's kind of a customer success role. So all the users and people that were part of this product, because it's a relationship management product, the BDR would actually reach out to them individually and follow up and offer a white glove service in terms of helping them understand how to use the system and offer training. There was a quick start guide, like we copied from an HP printer, and all the other like amazing things. And the idea was that he moved from outbound lead generator to value creator, for onboarding. So we still have the customer success department and function and that, but that kind of exists at almost an account level. But for the low level users, getting them to become au fait and enjoy and see value from the system, firstly, it helped us, onboard and do things faster, but it actually becomes a lead and growth engine in itself. So that is for a segment that, was completely new to what we had to offer. But with other segments, it was really about timing the conversations and the pace of that transition with, the customers, like what they were comfortable with. And one of the difficult things at a leadership level is going into this knowing that, some of your customer base just isn't going to remain your customer base, you know? And you have to have leadership that understands that.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's like knowing as you make the transition that you're going to lose a lot of people. You're going to gain people, but you're also going to lose a significant quantity. And now I'm curious too, because I remember I was talking about how this is kind of like an old world dynamic, the customer base that you sold to, like it's old world pen and paper. But simultaneously, now they're using a product and they're starting to dive into tech. So how did you help them to make that transition, like even the customers?
So I have to give a shout out, actually, if I may, we have an amazing VP customer success by the name of Tanya Cohen, and she really, really built a team that really cared about the customers and cared about their business outcomes. And we're talking about aligning incentives. So one, it's aligning the customers' incentives, in terms of the way we see things now, story and value creation, but it's also aligning the internal team's incentives with the customer success. And what we really did was we explained to the team internally and then to customers, and Tanya did a fantastic job, that our job is to help them run their businesses better.
Yeah.
We're not a thing they use. We are part of their business systems. And if we can help them to do that better, then their clients will be happier. And it sounds kind of, well, that's obvious. I mean, that's everyone's job in customer success. But I've had the privilege of working with some amazing people, and she was really something special. And a lot of time it's just breaking down into Excel. How tech savvy are people? How comfortable are they? This, and taking through their own pace. But it was really about guiding them through using the portal instead of email, and how do we do this and how do we do that, and training and everything else. Yeah.
Amazing. It's amazing. Sounds like you got a great team, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And so I'm curious too, because even the individuals that you're marketing to, they're probably not looking or searching online for your product if they're not even thinking something like that exists. So how did you guys design like going to market when the demand isn't even obvious?
It's a great question, and it was one of the key questions in the beginning. Is this something that can be marketed digitally? At all. The good news is yes, but it's a combination of two things really. One is thought leadership, and as cliched as it is, but the round tables and white papers and reports and things like this that really help expose a particular problem in the market, or help, we are like you, we see you, we are like you, we are here to help you. And the second is that when we speak about the market isn't a thing, right? It's a mixture of many, many things. So while not everyone is searching, and not everyone has exactly the same need, there are some people who have very clear pains, and you can identify them as individual groups, and you can address those pains. So for example, a particular pain might be time to produce one aspect. Another pain might be the transparency into something else, whatever it is. I'm not going to go into specifics of all of our legal tech problems, but you can then find those people searching for answers to that particular pain. Now,
Mhm.
it often isn't someone Googling, I am a lawyer and I have the following problem, but that's where you can understand tangentially what are they looking for, the types of solutions, where the places that they're reading information, that speak to the nature of this problem. And then you can guide them through a journey that is, look, like there are answers to this problem. Now,
Mhm.
you may not need the whole system, you may not need everything, but imagine if you had, like, one of the classic examples here is quotes. When you're dealing with foreign filing and things like that, it's very difficult to get exact quotes of what something will cost, because it depends on, how many diagrams there are and a whole bunch of word counts and things within a document. So you actually have to submit it first before you can get an accurate price. So one of the things we did is we built a tool that counted all of those things. Now, we built it so that it could support, our system could do all the amazing, wonderful workflow things it does in the back. But then the idea was, what if we just took that one aspect and we exposed it to people? Then all of a sudden, that could shorten the quote time, or it could help people deal with the problem where they have to manually count figures and numbers and, other things like this. So taking parts that were developed and exposing them was one of the ways that we got to address those pains, in smaller segments. But a lot of it is really just about conversations. Like, if you stop trying to sell to everyone all the time, and you really actually have conversations about what they think and what they want and what we're seeing, and you're willing to do that in an environment that is, safe. Like, it's a safe space. You're not going to get on a call with a salesperson. We are genuinely interested in what you think. Then even lawyers who are charging by the hour are willing to share those opinions. And they're much more willing to listen to what you have to say afterwards when they know that it isn't just a prelude to, a trick to get them on a sales call.
Hey everyone, it's Carly. So if this conversation is really hitting home and you want to get a real snapshot of what's working and what's not in your business, head on over to my website in the tools and tips section, and you can have the business performance health check. In just about 15 minutes, you're going to see where the friction is and where your next growth opportunity lies within your company. Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious too, because as you're saying this, like, what are the core values of your company?
So in terms of the culture internally, or in terms of our product facing, like out to the market?
I'm actually curious a little bit of both. Yeah. And just because I mean, I like to know, as I'm listening to everything, I'm like, I wonder what daily they're living by.
Right. So actually, for us, really, collaboration is one that exists in both, actually. But really, collaboration, internal locus of control, these are kind of our internal core values. And externally, we really believe in two things mainly. And, as a marketing person, I'm kind of, butchering, our value proposition and, our brand story and everything else. But if I were to distill it into two things, it would really be, data as data for the purpose of driving decisions, and collaboration. Because when you are working internationally and you're filing in patents and all those other things, by definition, you have to work with other people. So if you stop viewing those as single transactions and you view it as, collaborative mesh, or, a group of people working together, then it's in everyone's interest for those people to be transparent and there'd be more visibility into what's working for everyone. And data. I mean, that's really was the whole push towards software was about being able to quantify things,
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. As I'm listening to this, I'm like, what are some of the driving factors on the back end? Because it does sound like you guys have a great team. It sounds like everyone's really, as you said, collaborating. Like, they're really working together. Everyone's really making sure and has made sure that this has been a successful transition for the company.
Yeah, I think the one thing I know, we have, quite a good HR team, and we have like skip interviews and all these other wonderful things. And the thing that always comes out the highest is how much people value their coworkers, in terms of working together and their professionalism, and that's nice. It's not always the case. So that's really something.
Yeah, it shows. And I think as well, like, for people listening, you can see how much fun he's having. So it shows when you get the culture down, it really helps. And I'm curious too, because now that you guys have made the transition, what is the new North Star that you guys are going towards moving into?
Well, to be fair, we're still in that transition. I think we're, getting to the end of the forest.
Yeah.
But I think we haven't adopted something yet. We have some discussion about exactly what it will be. For example, one of the fantasies I have is, because it's an industry where all the customers are known, right? Because it's publicly exposed data, because they're regulated and registered in offices and things like this. And so our percentage of assistance in international patents. So, how much of the world's patent market do we, offer an assist to or help through some aspect of that process? I think is really where we want to be.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to not say anything more, since
That's perfect. Since you guys are
yeah,
still figuring it out. Yeah.
yeah. So
That is an exciting time though, because it's like you got to see something and you're getting to see something really big come into fruition, and then you're getting to start to brainstorm and get creative around like the next step of the company and the vision.
if 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 I may, I mean, it's different but similar to an experience I had at a previous company, and I'd love to just talk
Yeah.
about that for a sec. So before this, I was at a food tech company, which was really fun. Plant-based food, and early life nutrition in particular. Babies and toddlers, and kind of moving into kids. And one of the things we had was, we had multiple different points of distribution. We had a D2C store, and we sold on Amazon, and we're in retail. And one of the things that we did, which was very similar, is we came up with this concept that we had to stop looking at sales as transactions, and we
Mhm.
had to start looking at the people behind the sales. And more than the people, we had to start looking at the families. And what we did was we actually encouraged families to, increase their depth of use of our products and move through the different products as they grew. Not just trying to increase the frequency of sales or more transactions per user per month. This wasn't an ARPU thing. It was really about understanding that family, and helping the family understand how product could benefit them in different areas. And then we did something a little bit crazy, and this was one of the hardest changes I've had to do, was trying to convince customers to become channel agnostic. So traditionally in marketing, everything is channel driven, and you look at ROI on a particular channel. But if we could encourage customers to become channel agnostic, and then serve them where it was most comfortable for them, rather than where it made sense for us from a channel perspective, is we could start looking at them as a unit, as a family. And one of the biggest challenges we had with that, other than maybe convincing leadership, was, how do you measure that? How do you measure a family across multiple, and how do you measure, marketing spend and COGS and everything when, you're going through different channels? And what we actually found was it was quite difficult to figure that out. In the end, I think we came up with a, relatively elegant solution. But what appears to be, decreases in certain channels in the short term, actually ends up being, much better profitability, over the long term. And I think that it's something I've seen, at else, something I'm seeing at Azami, something I've seen, in every actually environment that I've worked in, is when you align your incentives
Mhm.
with what your customer is trying to do. And that's really, really align it, not try use the words to get them to think in a certain way. And then you build a system to support that outcome, rather than building systems to sell the product. It
Mhm.
ends up making everyone happier, and commercially you make a lot more money, because
Yeah.
you aren't fighting. When incentives align, growth happens naturally, and it becomes an acceleration, and the process gets faster and faster and faster, um, because everyone wants the same thing.
And I'm curious too, because, okay, so as you're talking about this, it's like, so we know this about marketing, right? We want to fulfill people's needs. We want to make sure that what we're offering fulfills them, and we know we'll keep the customers long term. It's funny because it seems like common sense, but then simultaneously, it's like you said, you got some resistance from the leadership company to go in and say, hey, we want to target like the families and connect with the families. Like, I want to stop focusing on the revenue and I want to start focusing on families. Why do you think we get so stuck, and even leadership can get so stuck in losing sight of what we're really actually doing when it comes to marketing, sales?
Wow, great question. I think it's the metrics. I think let me rephrase that. Not the metrics themselves, it's the KPIs. I
Yeah.
think that in a lot of business, we believe we serve KPIs, but we don't serve KPIs. KPIs are meant to be a measure of how well we serve customers. And um, when we track a KPI in isolation, and we don't always look at that in context of a larger system or in context of how well that's actually serving a customer, then, from a marketing perspective, ROI or ROAS or, CAC or lifetime value, whatever becomes the truth. It becomes the goal, why we exist. I exist in the morning to reduce CAC. No, I don't. I exist to impact people's lives by being able to bring them something, that they may not have found another way. And I think it's because in order to measure a business, we have to have numbers. And I think we are so concerned about meeting those KPIs that sometimes we forget that they're a means to an end, not an end in themselves.
Yeah, that's actually a great example. It's a really good point. And I'm curious too, because even what did you implement in the previous company or even this company that helps you guys remember that it's actually about the customers to reach those KPIs? And we're not reaching those KPIs. It's like, well, it has nothing to do with those numbers, it has to do with the customers. How do you guys stay grounded in that thought process?
Well, great question. So, I've been very fortunate that I worked for a couple of really amazing leaders early on who were super customer focused. And now that you're asking the question, I think, it probably influenced me more deeply than I realized, in terms of this. But it's really about two things. One is having a good customer feedback loop, and it in some places it's as simple as a CSAT survey. Sometimes it's about regularly getting on the phone with customers. And I think one of the most important things a marketing person can do in any environment is from time to time actually call customers and say, look, I just want to know what you think. um, so some sort of actual feedback loop that's qualitative and periodic. But the other thing is, because I do love numbers, is one of the easiest ways is to prove the correlation between customer satisfaction and bottom
Mhm.
line. Now, whether that's on, as brands build and brand equity and loyalty increases, the power of marketing dollars becomes more, and less of those dollars are going towards, having to break new ground, or it's, brand loyalty translating into lifetime value or whatever it is, um, there is always, maybe I'm overstating, but there's usually a very blatant correlation between how happy customers are with your product and how much money you make from it. Now, sometimes that could be a top line number, sometimes it could be a bottom line number, depending on, like fast moving consumer goods, or it's a SaaS based thing, there'd be very different places in the balance sheet, um, but in the P&L rather, but it's always there. If you're honest and you want to look for it, it's just good business to have happy customers.
Yeah, that's such a really good point. It's funny because I was like, when as you were saying, I was like, when is it not actually one of the cases? And I was like, oh, insurance companies in the United States. I was like, we're usually consistently unhappy with them, but we're all still paying for their services because it's required. But when
I
it's
have,
required, or
yeah.
yeah.
So I have actually an amazing story about that. So one of the places I was lucky enough to work was a health tech company where we
Yep.
launched a telehealth platform, right around Corona, and it was, from zero, brand straight in. It was, a largely uninsured market, um, and and the I don't want to say this the wrong way, but the how bad a job, some of these healthcare companies were doing at servicing, an uninsured population.
Yeah.
um, it became not only an opportunity, but we felt driven that we have to do this. The more we understood the problem, like there was one example that comes to mind. There was we had an app, you could see a doctor, and it was like very easy and quick and cheap and all these other wonderful things. But what we understood was that one of the reasons that people weren't using apps like this or going to the doctors wasn't just the $200 to go to a walk-in or emergency clinic. It was that even if you went and you now got diagnosed by a doctor, you couldn't afford the medication.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to RX in the States, in order to support the insurance companies, the medical insurance companies, what happens is prices are inflated or have historically been inflated so that they can lay their discounts on top and bring them down to normal level. Now, that's okay if you're on a health plan because you don't care, and I mean, you do care, but you care less. But if you don't have health coverage, then you have to pay these kind of, pretend prices. So what happened was we had a customer who went, was diagnosed, went to the pharmacy and actually called into support to say, look, I'm at the pharmacy. I'm here trying to get a prescription, but they want like $300 for the medication, And we like, there's more ways. And there was a doctor who actually was trying to help and looked for coupons and everything and found a coupon on GoodRx, sent it to the person, and they managed to get it for like $11. And what we realized, so in your example of when isn't it good business, this is exactly the thing. And it turned into an amazing thing for us is that we put in an automatic coupon engine that whenever the doctors would prescribe something on the app, it would automatically link via API to all the coupon sites and deliver into the application, whichever pharmacy they were going to, the best coupon for those people. So we were averaging like under $20, for 80% of, like acute conditions, what people would normally be paying $300-$400, to get at a pharmacy without it. And it was just because all they had to do was search for a coupon. But no one tells people this because it's not good business for them. So I don't feel bad at all for any business that's set up to take advantage of customers. Let them not succeed. That is fine. I will be happy to get into that market share every day.
I love that you did that, by the way. I was funny because I just picked up a prescription for my mom yesterday and it was $250. And I was like, I guess it is what it is. But you think about it, and it's an underserved market where I had never even thought, like, go online and check for a coupon or go check for something. So that's cool. I think that's great advice for anyone out there looking to start a company or build something. It's also who are the underserved individuals in that dynamic, in that demographic, and how can you actually connect and help with them? Which is very cool. I love that. And so now as you kind of look forward, what does it look like for you as you move forward with Azami? Like, what's going to shift and change in your job role as you guys continue to solidify this new market and expand?
I think again, there's two things that appear on the horizon. One is AI. So we built this, AI translation tool, and it's trained on patent data sets. So, it's not meant to translate well. It's meant to preserve, the essence of inventiveness, which is something very different. So obviously I want to lean into that from a product perspective because the timing is just, perfect. And I want to try to take advantage of that. But the second is I have a fantasy, which is that bringing, advantages that traditionally maybe only enterprise firms or Fortune 500 companies with IP portfolios had, using technology as a lever to bring those advantages down to small firms, to sole practitioners, that don't benefit from the economy of scale or don't have the kind of 17 people they can go to or 27 paralegals to go and write something. I think technology is a great equalizer if used well. So my fantasy is, no one's suggesting lawyers are an underserved population, but selfishly from a marketing perspective, if I can widen the audience and create a larger TAM for myself by being able to sell a product that traditionally, is not within what people could afford, by making it an equalizer and allowing them to compete with larger firms, then that would be pretty cool.
That's cool. Almost a disruptor using your technology.
Yeah, I
A little
guess.
bit.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate this. Your enthusiasm for what you do just definitely bleeds through the screen, and I loved just listening to everything that you're up to. So thank you for sharing this.
Thanks so much for having me, Carly. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, anyone who wants to, connect and talk any of these kind of things with me from your audience, please feel free. I really do enjoy it.
And where can they find you to connect?
Ah, so LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Yeah, definitely LinkedIn.
Okay, and I'm going to put a link to the LinkedIn in the show notes just to make sure everyone can find you really quickly. And again, I really appreciate you coming. If anyone really enjoyed this, if you like it, please share it with someone who you think would find value from it. And again, I really appreciate you coming, Mark. This was inspiring.
Thanks, Carly. Have a great day.
You too.